My son was at school when I heard his voice through the baby monitor. Clear as day. Mom. I froze. Because the room upstairs was empty? I never told anyone this. Not my husband. Not my sister. Not even the school counselor who called me 3 weeks later. Because how do you explain something like that? It was a Tuesday, October 14th, around 1 in the afternoon, rain hitting the kitchen windows, that kind of gray, heavy rain that makes the whole house feel smaller. I was folding laundry on the couch. The monitor was on the counter, the way it always is. Ethan had been sleeping in that room since he was 4 months old. He was 7 now. We kept the monitor out of habit. Mostly, his room was only upstairs, but the house was old, and the walls were thick. The volume was low. I almost didn't hear it, but I did. Mom. His voice? Exactly his voice. That soft, slightly tired way he says it when he wants something but doesn't know how to ask. I looked at the monitor. The green light was on. Signal active. I looked at the clock on the microwave. 1:07 p.m. Ethan had been at school since 7:45 that morning. At first, I told myself it was the TV. We have a small television in the guest room, across the hall from Ethan's room. Sometimes it picks up interference. I'd heard static before, bits of conversation from neighbors' devices. I set the laundry down, walked to the bottom of the stairs, listened. Nothing, just the rain. I went back to the couch. 30 seconds later, the monitor crackled. Mom. Slower this time, like he was waiting for an answer. I stood up so fast, I knocked the folded pile off the cushion. My heart was doing something strange. Not quite fear, not quite recognition, something in between. I walked upstairs. Ethan's door was half open. The way I always leave it, I pushed it all the way. The room was empty. His bed was made. His backpack was gone. His dinosaur lamp was off. Everything exactly the way it looks at 7:44. In the morning when I kiss him goodbye, I stood there for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and texted the school. Quick question. Is Ethan doing okay today? They responded in 4 minutes. He's great. Just finished lunch. Want us to pass along a message? I stared at that text for a long time. Just finished lunch at 1:11 p.m. My son had just finished eating chicken nuggets and apple slices in a cafeteria 12 minutes from our house, and his voice had come through the baby monitor in his empty room. I told myself it was a glitch. Old house, old monitor, bad signal. These things happen. I went back downstairs, folded the rest of the laundry, made myself a cup of tea. I didn't drink. The monitor stayed quiet for a while. Then, at 1:34 p.m., it turned on by itself. I say by itself because I was watching it when it happened. The green light had gone dark. I'd assumed the battery was low. I was about to go charge it when the light flickered back on, and I heard breathing. Speaking. Just breathing. Small, slow breaths. A child's breaths. I grabbed the monitor off the counter and turned it over in my hands. The power button was off. It shouldn't have been transmitting anything. The breathing continued. I set it down and took 3 steps back. That morning before school, Ethan had asked me something. He'd asked me if I was coming to his class play, the one at the end of the month. It was the 3rd time he'd asked. I'd told him I'd try. I remember the way his face looked when I said that. That particular kind of sad that kids have when they already know the answer but they asked anyway. He'd looked down at his cereal and said okay in a voice that meant anything but, I'm telling you this because I think it matters. I think whatever happened that afternoon was connected to that moment at the breakfast table, to every aisle try I'd given him, every concert I'd every bedtime I'd cut short because I had emails to answer. I don't know how, but I think it matters. The breathing stopped. The monitor light went dark again, and then I heard it for the 3rd time. Mom. Not a question this time. Just my name. In my son's voice. In an empty room. I didn't call the school again. I didn't want to sound like the kind of parent who calls twice in one afternoon asking if her son is alive. So I waited. I picked him up at 3:15. The way I always do. He came running out of the double doors with his backpack bouncing and his sneakers untied, and I grabbed him and held him longer than usual. He didn't ask why. Kids know when they need to let you hold on. On the way home, I asked him about his day. He told me about a spelling test and a boy in his class who'd cried at recess. Normal things, good things. Then I asked, as casually as I could, did anything weird happen today? Anything unusual? He was quiet for a second. Too quiet. Not really, he said. But he looked out the window when he said it. That night, after dinner, I called his teacher, Mrs. Holloway. She's the kind of teacher who actually picks up. She picked up on the second ring. I asked if everything had been okay that day. She said yes, mostly. I asked her what she meant. She paused. There was a small incident, she said. Around lunchtime, Ethan had a moment. He got very quiet. We thought he might be sick. We almost called you. I gripped the phone tighter. What time? I asked. She checked her notes. It started around 1:10. He was fine by 1:20. He said he just felt dizzy for a minute. 1:10. 3 minutes after I'd heard his voice for the first time, I sat down on the edge of my bed. Was he okay? I asked. I mean, really, okay. Another pause. He asked to call home, she said. He said he needed to talk to you, but by the time we'd walked to the office, he said he felt better. He said maybe you already heard him. I didn't say anything for a very long time. Maybe you already heard him. Mrs. Holloway asked if I was still there. Yes, I said. I'm here. There was one more thing she didn't mention that night. She told me a week later, almost as an afterthought, at exactly 1:14 p.m. to 3 minutes after Ethan had gone quiet. 1 minute after I'd heard the breathing, a school aide had found him standing at the window at the end of the hall, facing in the direction of our house. Just standing there, perfectly still. I reviewed the baby monitor footage that night. We had a recording function I'd barely used. 60-second clips triggered by sound. There were 3 clips from that afternoon, the first at 1:07, the second at 1:34, the third at 1:41. I watched all 3. In the first clip, the room is empty, the monitor sits on the shelf, and then, faintly, barely audible through the static, Mom, I have watched that clip 47 times. The voice is Ethan's. I'm certain of it. In the second clip, the room is still empty, the monitor is off, the way I'd thought, but the recording exists. 22 seconds of something that sounds like breathing. Small, slow, steady. In the third clip, and this is the one that stays with me, the room is still empty, but at the 11-second mark, the dinosaur lamp on Ethan's desk turns on. For exactly 4 seconds, then off. I don't have an explanation for that. I've looked for one. I really have. We had the monitor replaced. The lamp too. The electrician found nothing wrong with the wiring. Ethan never mentioned that afternoon again. Not once. But 2 weeks later, he came downstairs while I was working and he sat next to me and he didn't say anything. He just put his head on my arm. And I closed the laptop. I went to the class play. Front row. Spotted me the second he walked onto the stage and his whole face did something I can't describe, like relief and surprise and happiness all at once. Like he hadn't been sure I'd actually come. I had a feeling, sitting there in that folding chair in that school gymnasium, that whatever had happened that Tuesday afternoon had been trying to tell me something. Not to scare me, to wake me up. I don't know if I believe in anything beyond what we can see and measure and explain, but I know what I heard, and I know what the recording shows, and I know that my son, 12 minutes away in a school cafeteria, stood at a window facing our house and said, maybe you already heard me. Maybe I did.